He went on the radio in his day and age and got the word out once there was radio, and he did every way possible to spread the good news. And so, the important point of all this is that Jesus was trying to teach 2,000 years ago what unity, and we would call New Thought, is trying to teach today. The vision of our co-founders in Jesus the Christ was exactly the same, and that was to wake up. To wake up to who and what you truly are. To learn the true meaning of the wisdom writings found in the scriptures. And to apply these truth principles in our lives. So not a little vision, right? Principles such as our 5 core beliefs. That God is all there is. That we are God in expression. That there are universal laws that support and bless us. That affirmative prayer and meditation are our direct link to that one source, that one power, that one presence. And that we're called to live a life based in truth. You know, if you just did that, take several lifetimes, right? Not just one. You know, folks, unity is not about doing church like traditional churches. It's not about bringing salvation to the people or maintaining authority and control. And sometimes you wouldn't know it by me. Or to ensure the continuation of a culture or race. Or to teach an exclusive belief system through rigid indoctrination. Unity is about celebrating the truth. That we are, like Charles Fillmore liked to affirm, spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, governed by spiritual law. Of course, I loved Arlene's meditation. It was right on. Again, spirit working. All that was in that meditation is what we celebrate in the teachings of truth. And just like Jesus Christ stepped out of the mainstream religious teachings of his time, unity has stepped out of the mainstream teachings of our time. Unity True students are really the present-day disciples of Jesus the Christ. Now breathe if you're not a big Jesus Christ fan. Because we're talking about the original teachings, the intent of what Jesus was trying to do. These were rebels. They were radical people of their time. They were shaking up the temples like we shake up the churches. You know, it makes me think of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, Mary Baker Eddy, Ernest Holmes, Emma Curtis Hopkins, to name just a few, who really just simply picked up where the disciples left off. People like John and Peter and James. And you and I, folks, have picked up where Charles and Myrtle have left off. I can really personally strongly relate to the Fillmores. You know, I have shared with some of you that from an early age, I had the benefit of some mystical experiences like Myrtle that just brought me into a complete faith in knowing that there was more than meets the eye, that oneness with God. And even though I was raised to be a very good Episcopalian, I also had the opportunity to study many of the major and minor religious philosophies of my day. You know, I was raised in a family where my parents were Episcopalians but also Rosicrucians. And my mother was raised in unity. And at 18, I got involved with Edgar Cayce's foundation, ARE, and learned how to meditate, and learned about the concept of reincarnation. And then when I got married and moved to Europe, I had the opportunity to study the Course in Miracles. You know, all these things changed and molded who I was. And I know many of you have similar stories, right? We share these stories in our new member orientation sessions. What got us into unity? You know, many of us have walked this spiritual path that, let's say, is a path to the beat of a different drummer, would you say? And that path led me to Unity in 1994. You know, I had always thought that I would become an Episcopal priest until I first stepped foot on Unity grounds that summer of 1994. And everything that I had learned up to that point in my life came together into one perfect fit for me and my understanding when I was introduced to the Fillmores, to the teachings of Jesus Christ in a totally new and different way. And it was a time in my life, it was a time that my life as I had known it was falling apart. My marriage had ended, my nephew had died, I had had a recent burglary in my home where many of my precious belongings had been stolen. So really, literally, the foundation beneath my feet had crumbled. Have you noticed that a lot of times that's when we find the truth? Anybody else had that? You don't have to have that. You don't have to have the cosmic 2x4, thank God. But for many of us, it is that wake-up call. Well, it was at this time in my life that I began to learn the Unity Truth Principles and what I like to call the real teachings of Jesus the Christ. I thought I had been a lifelong disciple of Jesus, but I hadn't been until I began to read the books in Unity. And I couldn't get enough of it. You know, my spirit, my mind, my heart were on fire with what I was learning. And what I found is I just kept taking class after class after class. Anybody else can relate to that? You know, some of the true students up here, until before you knew it, 7 years later, I was ordained. That's what happens a lot of times in Unity. And just like Charles Fillmore in Unity, and Paul, with Jesus' teachings, I wanted to share this newfound truth for me with the world. Or at least my little part of the world up here in New England. You know, a lot of you may not know, in New England, when I was going through Unity, there was hardly any Unity churches. I went directly to Unity Village because my mother had been raised in Unity, so I was reading Daily Word, I was reading Unity Magazine. I didn't even know they had any churches. And so when I went to the village, they said, "What church do you go to?" I'm like, "What? I go to St. Luke's Episcopal Church, please." You know, so when I came back, I had to find a church, and the only one closest to me, I was in Charlton. I had to drive an hour and a half one way to Somerville to go to church. You know, there was one church in Vermont, one church in Maine, nothing in New Hampshire, nothing in Rhode Island. There were like 3 churches maybe in Massachusetts, a couple in Connecticut. And here we are in the home of New Thought. New Thought began in New England, folks, with people like Thoreau and Emerson, you know, and Emmett Fox and Mary Baker Eddy. But where were we? Where was New Thought up here? So, of course, early on in my vision, in my passion in ministry, was I wanted to see unity all over these 6 states. Yeah. Because we even had the reputation in the Unity movement that there was thick, dense energy up in New England. I was like, what? Just because we have snowstorms and you don't want to build churches here. Don't say we have thick, dense energy up here, right? We don't. I never believed it. I never bought it. Now, how far have we come? You know, in the 18 years that I've been in Unity up in New England, there has been growth up here. It's not as fast as I want to see it. We're doing the best in Massachusetts. We have 7 Unity churches in Massachusetts. And I'm proud to say we seeded a church down in Providence, Rhode Island. This church helped the Unity of Radiant Light begin in Rhode Island. So there is growth happening. But my vision going into ministry has always been about preaching and teaching the Unity Truth Principles to as many possible people. As many people as I possibly can is what I'm trying to say. Principles that transform Jesus' life, his followers' life, that transform Myrtle and Charles Fillmore's life, their followers, that transform my life, and many of the fellow true students that I have met along the way. You know, before Unity, I was a victim of circumstances. Life happened to me. Right? Some of it was luck, some of it was fate, but I definitely didn't feel that I had very much I could do about it. maybe the God out there would bless